You are tuned in to the Foul Weather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Coastal North Carolina is rich in waterfowling history, and Ed Farley, hailing from the Matamuskeet region, exemplifies the North Carolina state motto, and I'm going to try not to butcher this Latin, Esse Quam Videri, and I did look up the pronunciation, and even though it is spelled with a V, it's pronounced Widiri as far as the Google told me, so... What it means, what the state motto means, is being genuine, honest, and disciplined rather than just appearing to be so. Ed Farley, manager of conservation programs for Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia for Ducks Unlimited, grew up with wetlands and ducks in his blood and followed that tradition into a career that benefits all the great people across duck country USA. Today we join Ed to hear his story of waterfowl wonderment and growing into an impactful hunter conservationist. And again, I think Ed exemplifies that state motto of being genuine, honest, and disciplined rather than just appearing to be so. Ed, welcome to the Foul Weather Podcast, bud.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. And I think those are very kind words. Whether they're deserved or not, I do not know.
Well, we know each other from a few years of you doing your grad degree with us at ESF, and I don't know. I'm gonna stroke your ego and say it really, it is fitting. It is fitting for you, Ed. So, but I want to dive right into your kind of history, the history of duck hunting in your part of the world, and what is it about North Carolina that is so special for the ducks, geese, and swans? You got a swan thing going on more so than a lot of other people do. So what is it that makes that such a special place for these birds we love and pursue?
The thing I come back to is I really think it's the wetlands. This is a very low part of the world, and so there's a lot of freshwater wetlands, a lot of brackish wetlands, a lot of saltwater wetlands from the Pamlico Sound up into Albemarle Sound and all the way up to Mackey Island. Northeast North Carolina has a whole lot of habitat, and I think that's a big part of why the ducks, geese, and swans respond to it. You've got Lake Matamuskeet, which is the largest natural lake in North Carolina, and traditionally it had lots of submerged aquatic vegetation, although in recent years that has severely declined, which is not good to see. But those resources, the submerged vegetation, the emergent vegetation, all of these things provide a whole lot of duck habitat, and the birds really respond. And we all know that where there's ducks, there's going to be duck hunters, and so that's where
For
where
sure.
that comes from. And I always plug that Hyde County, North Carolina, is the #1 county for duck harvest in the Atlantic Flyway. So it really is the cradle of it down here on the Atlantic coast.
Yeah, that's a cool fact. And when we go to the wing bee, if anybody's done the parts collection survey where you mail your wings in, and we're sampling right now, we're doing a project with Delta Waterfowl. We got a student, she's originally from Wisconsin, that's running that project. But so we're going down there and collecting green wings and gadwall and widgeon and stuff. And Hyde County is just like every other envelope, it seems like. So, and they're not all yours because you were in the wing, you were in it this year, right, Ed?
Yeah, I sent a few. It was a little bit of a down year for my wing submissions, but not by a ton.
Yeah, we don't want to compare notes because you would still kind of blow me out of the water. So how long's your family been in that part of the world, and what are some of your earliest memories in these famed marshes of Hyde County?
Yeah, well, I've had family in North Carolina for a long, long time. Yeah, one relative came down from Virginia and bought his first tract of land from the Native American tribe, the Aramaskeet Indians down there back in, I think, 1740. They're about 1740,
Wow.
and he was not the first relative, you know, in the area either. And so, yeah, at that time it was part of after the Tuscarora War, there was a Native American reservation in the area. And so, since then, a lot of those tribal members sold a lot of their property, and so there's a lot of that still, a lot of those people are still in the area, but the reservation itself eventually dissolved just through selling their property through, to other people. But yeah, I had family in the area for a very, very long time, and my that was on my paternal grandmother's side is where that comes from. And my paternal grandfather met my grandmother, and one of their first dates, I always like to say, was a goose hunt back when they called it the goose hunting capital of the world, because the Atlantic population of Canada geese used to primarily winter at Lake Matamuskeet, and so they went goose hunting. And it's a really a neat note that I like to make, that they went on a date goose hunting, which is fun for me. But yeah, it's just a tremendous area. And when the geese started short stopping, which is an old saw that's very timely now. But when those geese started short stopping up in the Delmarva Peninsula, they really started shifting to duck hunting and creating duck impoundments. And yeah, I think our first duck impoundment was in the mid 70s that we built.
Hmm.
And so we've been doing it for a long time there. And I remember I first shot my I shot my first duck in 2001. So that was a while ago, but it was a lot of fun. Shot uh juvenile Drake pintail was my first duck. Never forget that. I sailed it out with a 410, and we spent a long time looking for it, and I found it sitting on the path belly up, and I'll never forget that. So definitely a special place for me. And
How many
we
shots
still
did it take you, do you think, to get that bird? Because my first bird was a hen mallard, and she landed on the shore of a creek we were hunting on her back, kind of legs up, kicking when I went over and picked her up. But I think it took me 2 boxes of shells to hit my first duck. So hopefully you were a little better than that. Do
Yeah,
you
I
remember?
I really don't remember. I didn't shoot a whole lot that first year. I shot a goose before I shot a duck with that 410, and I remember they were really thick that day, and I shot two geese with one shot with a single shot 410. They were that close, and many of them.
Nice.
So
What
I got
was
pretty
that? What was
lucky.
that for? What was that 410? Do you remember? Do you still have it? The 410?
Yeah, I think it was an old H&H. Yeah, the
Eight.
break
Yeah,
action
yeah.
410. We still got
Oh
it.
yeah.
So there's a lot of kids have killed their first duck with that one.
I had a 16 gauge in that same kind of model. So, yeah.
Let me tell you that
Um,
it kicks like a mule.
it does. It does. When I was in my, just in my early teens and shooting that 16 gauge, and I was a little scrawny kid, it was kicking the crud out of me. So, yeah. Um, so you did you move away a lot or not really? You kind of went up. I mean, in your kind of years of growing up as a waterfowl biologist, I don't recall if you traveled a lot or you kind of stuck on the Atlantic coast mostly. Like, how often have you been away from home and then kind of come back to home?
So after college, I the fall after I graduated, I let me think about this for a second. Well, I was the fall after I graduated, I was quote unquote unemployed. I like to say I was fun employed, and so I hunted the entire duck season, and it was one of the best duck seasons we ever had, and so that was just awesome. But then the spring after that, I took a job working for Delta Waterfowl as a
Okay.
waterfowl technician, doing nest drags up in the prairies, and then from there, I briefly came home for a couple months and then got hired on as a conservation intern with Ducks Unlimited in Michigan.
That's
And
right.
that,
You were in Michigan. Yeah. Yep.
that must have been 2015. And then from there, I moved to New York after my internship was up. They hired me on full time as a mitigation specialist. And so I moved over to Central New York, and
Hmm.
then I lived there for probably 7 or 8 years. Can't remember
Hmm.
exactly. And then moved down to Maryland, working for DU in our Chesapeake area. And then from
You're
there,
missing an important fact in the middle there, though. You met your current, your not your current wife. You met your wife. That was a weird way to say it.
she is my current wife, and she'll be my
She is
future
your
wife
current
too.
wife. Right, right. And you what's neat though is you carried on kind of the grandparents' tradition there, and that the two of you do hunt together. So
We do, and so we
I
actually met
love.
in your waterfowl class.
Yeah, that's what I do. I just hook students up, right? That's all that is to find two people. And I probably warned you against something like that because I'm in the same situation with my wife working with DU, and like, you know how hard it is for two duck people to end up in the same place. So, um, give I was gonna do. I mean, I might do this because her sister. works for Montana, whatever they are, Fish and Game, let's just call them.
Department of Fish and
And
Wildlife.
then what's that?
Oh, wait, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
It's
Montana Fish,
it's
Wildlife, and Parks.
FWC, FWP,
P.
FWP. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So thank you. And her husband is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, like a federal agent, right, for
Mm-hmm.
the refuge system in general. And then I was gonna do a episode sometime of couples in conservation and kind of cover like the do's and don'ts of that whole hookup because it's not easy. I mean, you did
Mm-mm.
really well to not live apart, but we lived apart for quite a while. Even after we were married, we were living in separate countries, Ed. So
Mm.
yeah, I was in Canada. I mean, I had to work a couple weeks in Canada, then I could come home for like 3. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
horrible, but still,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Takes a lot. But you two stuck together the whole time. So you went down, you met, then you went down to Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
and keep going there. I apologize for interrupting. I
Yeah.
just like the little in between stories there for you, bud. So
Yeah, and then there was an opportunity to become the manager of conservation programs for the Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia area for Ducks Unlimited. And so I moved back home, took that position, and um, my wife stayed home with our daughter for a few months. But actually, last fall, she was hired on as the migratory game bird biologist for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And so now she's helping to manage the ducks for the state down here. And so we're very lucky that we both found jobs that we love and are helping to manage waterfowl for hunters and people.
yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. We're going to take a quick break, folks. So please stick with us if you want to hear about how last season went down in North Carolina. I think not just for Ed, but I think he's got a finger on the pulse of the duck hunting culture down there. So, and we're going to hear more about duck habitat along the Atlantic coast from DU biologist Ed Farley. My friends across duck country, time to step up your calling with Beckman Game Calls. These beauties sound like a duck. Just have a listen. First, a real hen mallard, and then the Edison in the flooded timber of Arkansas. Beckman Game Calls with a lot of new colors and woods coming soon. Both the Edison and the Groundbreaker calls are adjustable to your air pressure, and the Groundbreaker is the first adjustable cut down on the market. Check out Beckman Game Calls today at beckmangamecalls.com. And we are back with Ed Farley, Ducks Unlimited, North Carolina. Ed, I think we covered a bit of this already. I've got down speak on your progression as a duck biologist for all the aspiring kids out there. I mean, you covered like the step by step, right? But
Hmm.
like, what are like the formative things you think that happened? Because these next steps, they're not always planned. They're kind of organic, right? Like the next thing
Hmm.
comes up. But like, what is the like? If you had some tips to folks in high school, college, and so on that are kind of hunter conservationists, how do you keep the energy? How do you keep doing it? What are the steps you take to kind of get there?
I mean, the thing I always say is like chase your passion. If you're truly passionate about something, you're going to do your very best and work your hardest, both to achieve your goals and also when you have those opportunities, you'll make the most of them. And I've been extremely lucky. I always tell people that I never would have said my dream job was working as a biologist for Ducks Unlimited because I thought that would be too pie in the sky. That'd be like saying I wanted to be an astronaut, something like that. So,
Yeah.
I'm beyond my wildest dreams is where I'm currently at. And, for people who want to pursue the same kind of career path, I would say it's just do what you love and you'll do a good job at it. And
Mhm.
that's just the very high level overview of it. But, find technician jobs, just, do what the next opportunity is. Like I was a Delta waterfowl technician. It was one of the most fun positions I've ever had. But more than that, it really did set me up well for, the future. And when you work hard, when you show people how much you care, that really sets it up. Because a lot of this field and a lot of any field, to be honest, is built on relationship. It's built on people.
Hmm.
And so that passion is contagious and people can see it. And it really does, in my opinion, open up opportunities down the
Hmm.
road too, when people can say, well, that person, they really care. They love it. They're going to do their best. And that I think is a big part of why I've been able to do what I've been able to do because I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I can tell you that I really do care about ducks as much as anybody else.
Well, and you hit on a good point. I'll kind of expound on it a little bit. Is like when you're working with folks too, is like work hard but be good to the people around you as well. Because if
Hmm.
you're good to them, they're going to be good to you, right?
Definitely.
And that's just a massive part of it. And I don't, you shouldn't put yourself down at all about the, academic end because, you got a master's degree from ESF while working with DU and you took on a pretty darn big project at Montezuma. And, you know, it was, I mean, you were managing a crew of people, you were managing the lab. Like that's one of the bigger projects I've actually been involved with, on the scale that we did that. And you want to just give like a, do you remember? Boy, do you remember it? It's been a couple days. Just a quick brief because it does like really focus on moist soil management and
Hmm.
the emergent marsh cycle, and what did we kind of learn from that? From like what in a nutshell was the project, and what did we learn from it, Ed?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the project was looking at varying water level management regimes on a set of test wetlands. They have 30 wetlands, 27 of which were on the northern Montezuma Wildlife Management Area, three of which were on Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. And it spanned 3 years. And across those years, we assigned management treatments to each of those wetlands. And those treatments were passive management, full drawdowns, and partial drawdowns. And some of that, ideally we would have done it where each wetland would have gotten each treatment, but as any wetland manager knows, you kind of have to roll with the punches. Weather and Mother Nature are not necessarily going to agree, and so we had to kind of um, do what we could when it came to the management treatments. But ultimately, we were looking to see what the response of plants, birds, and invertebrates were to those differing treatment methods. And so we looked at submerged aquatic vegetation, looked at plant community, we looked at invertebrate community, we looked at waterfowl, both in the springtime and during the summer period. And we also looked at all birds during that summer period. And we also looked at secretive marsh bird um, use of those wetlands. And so it was really a pretty all-encompassing project to see what you know, launch those wetland management treatments. I remember, several different times during the project, I thought to myself, man, what did I get myself into? This is never going to get done. But I was very lucky to have a strong lab and some really strong technicians that helped get the field work done. And I remember looking through core samples. That was like as tedious as it gets, picking through
Painful,
core samples
painful.
for seeds.
Yes.
Gosh, but
But you
it,
look back at it and you're like, how did I get that done? But what you did is you just got up every day and you picked away at it, right?
mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah, 1,000 mile
persistence.
journey starts with 1,000 mile
Yeah.
journey starts with one step. So,
Yeah.
it was just one at a time doing it, and it came up with some really cool results. That the obviously, makes sense that managed wetlands tend to have more seeds in them. That was a big
Hmm.
part of the core sample showed, and the interesting thing was that the bird community used the different wetlands at different times. Passively managed wetlands did seem to have um, aerial insectivores feeding over them during the summertime, which kind of makes sense based on what you would expect from the invertebrate community and aerial invertebrates. But it
Hmm.
also, once you started putting water on those fully drawn down wetlands, those birds really shifted over, and the fully managed, fully drawn down wetlands, those seeds, which are really good for waterfowl, were also really good for a lot of insectivorous passerines. So,
Hmm.
songbirds were really using those as well. And it was just a really um, fun project, and I was really grateful to be a part of that.
Well, and you had just a great a great crew too. I'm thinking like one of the lab managers was Jordan Thompson. He's doing his PhD at Colorado now. Um, I can't remember everybody's name. The one kid went to University of it's like University of Indiana at Pennsylvania. He's
Was
on
that
the
Tyler
macro.
Hodges?
Thank you. You're reminding me. Yeah, Tyler
Mm-hmm.
Hodges. I think Aiden Flores helped you out a little bit as well in
Yeah,
the field.
yeah. Both
Um,
Aiden Flores and Jake Cronister, while they were
yeah,
also doing their masters, they were able to help me out on mine. So
yeah.
I
And
got some
Aiden's
support from them.
well, that's good for having those friendships too. I mean, Aiden's down on the Texas coast working for Delta, and we just interviewed Jake, and he's over in Minnesota with DU as well. I'm trying to think who else came on. Well, Zlewinski is,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's like a wetland specialist with he went to the DOT, Department of
Mm-hmm.
Transportation in New York now. And Josh Bacon was with us. Josh went to Ukraine. I don't know if you've kept in touch with Josh at all, but
I
he
have
went to
not.
Ukraine to basically do humanitarian type efforts behind the lines, but was like in places that
Wow.
were getting bombed. Like I gave him a lot of credit. He's like,
Mm,
I'm gonna go help these people out because they need it. And he just literally jumped ship
mm,
and got a hold of some community based group. And yeah, I mean, I don't know.
mm,
He's done a lot of different stuff throughout his life, and he's just the kind of person to like jump off that bridge, you know.
mm.
He's back on home soil. He shot a nice turkey recently, actually, so it was
Nice.
good to have him back home. But yeah, great crew of people. That's really
Mm-hmm.
what it was, and you helped manage all that stuff. And what was cool though is like you can't just apply from the results. You can't just apply one management type if you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about all wildlife on a place that
Mm-hmm.
those different types of habitat in a complex, that's why it's a complex, add up together to create, the whole picture for the wildlife
Mm-hmm.
folks are looking to save. And you know what's funny though is like we kind of knew it, but sometimes you gotta like do these projects with these managers so they can see the light. You know what I mean? As well.
Well,
So,
I mean, you can know it, but you got to prove it, and that's always part of it
mhm.
too.
Yep. Yeah, we got to go through the observation period and then collect all that information and plug it into the computer. And I mean, here's a lesson for kids though. Like the stats, you had to do it. You proved you could jump through the hoops, but you don't use it now, do you?
I don't use statistics too much, more than some means and medians.
Right, for sure. Hey, let's get back to duck migration. We are the Foul Weather Podcast. We talk a lot about that. You spent some time in central New York duck hunting here. Don't give away any spots. Nobody should come here. There are good opportunities, but there are better places in the world, I would say, like where y'all are from in North Carolina. But we had a bit of a longer, I mean, colder winter. It was colder earlier. I mean, we started heating with the wood stove in like mid-October, and I'm actually running. We're recording May 14th, and I'm feeding the wood stove still, which is insane. We're wet and cold. We're in like the 50s, and we had a big thunderstorm with some hail last night. And so this is by far the longest kind of heating season and I guess cold period that we've had in this farmhouse. That we've been living here like 14, 15 years. But what I always say is like along the Atlantic coast, when the ducks kind of leave the Montezuma region, which is kind of cool. Like you worked in this region that I think the ducks leave here and they kind of show up in North Carolina. And I'm talking like a lot of the widge and the gadwall, the pintails. I guess I don't know if there's a real question there. Is that kind of the relationship you've seen through time? And is there someplace to the north of you that you look for weather, for your birds to be showing up down in your part of the world?
You know, it's interesting because I really don't look where we hunt. A lot of the ducks tend to show up generally in the same times, and if you can catch some of those days where they arrive, you may have some really good hunts. But a lot of what we're doing is, the wintering ducks are there. So you're
Hmm.
just hoping for weather to move them around on the landscape that they're already there. And
Hmm.
you can get them when they first get there and they're naive, in November, you can really do well. But once you get into the late season, December, January, in my experience, the ducks that we're hunting have been there for a while. And so they game. You need the weather to move them around on the landscape rather than to the landscape. And
Hmm.
so I don't necessarily look north for some of that stuff, but I do think that Montezuma is as good a place as any to see that. Where if it's cold and icy up there, there's not going to be a whole lot of ducks north of us, which is good.
Yeah, and I think that fits with what we've seen because those early species, the teal, the gadwall, the widgeon, the pintails, and the shoveler, are more so your game than mallards for the most part. I'm
Hmm.
expecting in your part of the world, right? Those mallards, just black ducks, are just not making it there as much. But like you remember from being here, those ducks are here in September. They're
Hmm.
here when the season opens. They're about peaking when we open in what, like the second Saturday in October or something, and then they just disappear, right? They
Hmm.
move out of there. Usually, what that first split's 21 days. It's like 3 weeks, I think, in Western New York. And most of them, I mean, sometimes they hang around till the season opens back up in December, but most of them are just gone, right?
Hmm.
And then so when your season opens, they've probably already moved. They've moved in. This is where people end up calling them calendar migrants, but like they do tweak based on the weather. But just why would we have a season open before those ducks show up, right? Like that's really what you're doing is making sure those birds are there so that you can bang away at them, and then hopefully your tougher ducks, show up a little bit later.
Hmm.
But I think that's probably what's going on for y'all for the most part. Now, how do those? I mean, you get ringnecks too quite a bit, don't you? On some of the bigger water as well.
There's a lot of ringnecks down in our neck of the woods. Our duck ponds, it's very intermittent. Some years you'll have them,
Okay.
some years you won't. We always shoot a few, but some years they'll be second or third most common duck, and other years you'll kill two. But is there a lot of
Is,
places where that is the primary duck or close to it?
is it matter how the impoundment's managed as to when you get different species for the most part?
We generally manage our impoundments the same, or try to do the same most years. And I couldn't really tell you why. Some years we have a lot, some
Okay.
years we don't. And this year, for instance, we didn't have many ringnecks, and then on the youth hunt, there was a pile of ringnecks, in there in
Ah,
February.
yeah, yeah.
So
Late.
they
Interesting.
seemed to find it. I don't know if we had more open water at that time of year, and that's what they needed, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I know that some places they do really, really well on the ringnecks in our area.
Now, you weren't you weren't dry like we were last year, were you? Or were you really dry as well? Like we were so dry the ducks didn't even stop here. Like they blew right past us for the most part.
We were dry. It was definitely, I would say dry. But we had enough rain at the right times that we had water, and we have a well, and so it's not
Yeah,
enough to flood it on its own, but it helps saturate the soil, which you don't need near as much rain when you can saturate that soil. So it
for
definitely
sure.
was dry. I would say January was probably drier than when we flood, that kind of thing. It was dry enough that one of
Mhm.
our duck impoundments did dry out actually um
Wow.
in January. Yeah.
So did that the relatively cold winter and stuff and early weather that I was talking about, did it translate to a little better season for y'all, or was it kind of a moderate season, or where did it land this year, last year, Ed?
I would say that this past season was a good year. It was a good season. There were plenty of ducks around, and like I said, that cold weather that we had in North Carolina, I believe, helped to improve our, you know, duck movement in and around
Hmm.
the area. We're close to some, big refuge, and so when the weather's warm, they just don't need to move as much. They're, flying a little more late, a little earlier, and when it's cold, they have to do a lot more feeding, and so they're a little more susceptible. And so I think that helped us out. I heard that there was a few places where they had some ducks early and then had a big lull. And then when
Hmm.
we had some of those, colder storms towards the back half of January, the hunting got really excellent. We had a big nor'easter come through on the last weekend of the season, and the hunting was excellent from pretty much everybody that I talked to. I mean, there were people killing canvasbacks in the
Wow.
Piedmont on some some of the lakes there, and it was, I would say a really memorable end to the season for most people.
Well, that's great because we got this El Nino thing coming and it does not look pretty for this year. So I'm keeping my finger on it. Put a social media post up today about, I mean, we got a 25% chance of having a super El Nino, which would be brutal. People are throwing around the term Godzilla El Nino, which I love. It just I'm like whatever. But we are nearly 100% sure that we're going to be in an El Nino winter. So we'll see what happens with it. There'll at least be water in the southeast, in the southern portion of the central Mississippi Atlantic flyways, but might be warm and wet. But a lot of folks would at least rather have the water than the bone dry they've had, at least at the southern end of the Mississippi flyway. So we'll see. But did the you said canvasbacks, did mallards or black ducks ever get to you this year in any number or not really?
We rarely shoot a ton of mallards anymore. I mean, we used to shoot a lot more of them.
Mhm.
I think this past year, I think we killed maybe 3 mallards,
Wow. Okay.
which one of them was
Okay.
on the last day. So there was mallards around, black ducks around, but not not a ton. I know a few towards that latter part of January. So I think it definitely helped bring some down. Um, but not for us because we used to the peak mallards I think we've killed in a year was over 300, and like I said last year we killed like three. So
Wow.
it's
Wow.
it's
Would
really
that have been
changed
back in
the
like the 80s or something, or when would that have been?
that was in 89 back when it was a
Yeah.
30-day season with a three bird limit. But
Huh.
that was a pretty good year. In the
Yeah,
90s
yeah.
through early 2000s we were still killing mallards regularly, and then in the last probably 20 years it's petered out to basically nothing.
Interesting. What is your bread and butter duck then? Like, what do you mostly
Green
shoot?
wing teal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Green
You
wing
shoot small
teal.
small gauges then, Adam, or do you shoot 12 gauges and or
Well,
you take your 10 gauge out there
yeah,
and bang away at them?
we, the gauge, not necessarily. I mean, whoever hunts, brings whatever they want, but
Right.
we normally shoot. I shoot a 12 gauge for the most part, but a lot of times, especially when it's mostly teal, we'll shoot steel sevens, just because we're shooting them close or hoping to shoot them close, and steel sevens will
Oh
be
yeah.
plenty good for a teal.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now you talked about your different impoundments that you've got. What kind of habitat are you providing in that part of the world? Is it flooded crops, a lot of moist soil, or I mean, maybe something different I'm not even thinking of?
There's a most of the impoundments in that area have at least some component of flooded corn. That's a big part of it. We do have some flooded corn, but the for the teal, especially the moist soil that's in there is, in my opinion, really, really important. Um,
Hmm.
I would not have an impoundment that was 100% corn, for a lot of reasons. But I think a little bit of the corn is nice, if for nothing else other than the vertical structure.
Yeah, yeah,
Owls
for
are a
sure.
big problem, and so I think the ducks really like having something overhead at night,
Hmm.
especially where they can have some protection. I know some people plant Egyptian wheat because it gives really good vertical cover, and eagles, owls, others, hawks, they don't really. The ducks will go in there to get the cover from those. So. But yeah, it's a mix, and I would say that providing a range of habitat at a range of depths is really nice. I
Hmm.
know that we see the depth really matters for where you see the different species in individual impoundments within that impoundment. So, that ankle deep water is usually really good for the teal in the
Hmm.
moist soil, and then once you get into the deeper side, that's where you get your ringnecks, gadwall, widgeon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those little teal are kind of small seed specialists. They really like that
Hmm.
moist soil stuff, and yeah, you point something out really important. Like I've seen this a lot of ducks just abandon like a straight up moist soil area at sunset. They're out of there unless they can hug some cover. By us
Hmm.
it's Phragmites, but that corn really creates that vertical structure. There's a lot of comment that that's a lot of what these birds are going in
Hmm.
there for. Sometimes that corn just gets stripped early
Yeah.
by blackbirds, coots, everything gets after it and it's gone, but the birds are still kicking around in it.
Yep.
Um, are
Invertebrates
you?
are another important piece, I think, that's really undersold. And I think the moist soil, when you have that thatch, underneath, it's a really good substrate for invertebrates. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that is poorly appreciated, just how much these birds are, focusing on invertebrates, especially, the latter part of the season, I think.
As you move towards hens thinking about spring and stuff like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do y'all have are you in a coffee weed part of the world or not quite?
Big time.
Are you?
And I actually like, I mean, it's pretty impossible or really, very, really difficult to completely get it out of an impoundment.
Hmm.
We have a bunch of it every year, but I think that vertical structure from the uh, Suspania is really helpful for the
Hmm.
ducks as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks. I mean, you fight it a little bit, you mow some of it down. If you can hit it, if you can herbicide it early, but you're going to kill other stuff that might be quality within there too. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it creates insane structure that birds sit in. They'll day roost in it on a windy day, and they'll night roost in it as well. So I'm kind of a fan of it. I mean, people are going to hate me for that. Like, it can take an area over, but that's like you just got to have a habitat manager and just keep after it. Like,
Hmm.
you can't you can't just pull the boards, walk away,
Hmm.
and then show up to pump it full and be like, "Oh, what happened to my place is overrun." Well, you should have
Hmm.
been there probably for on a every other week or every third week basis to catch up on that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't introduce it if you don't have it, but if you got
no,
it,
no, no.
a
Right,
little bit.
right.
Alligator weed is another big problem down here, which
Mm.
it's actually a really good invertebrate substrate as well, but it does take over and can really impact drainage of impoundments and things of that nature too.
It plugs up your control structures, I'm guessing. Is that what's going on
And the
there?
ditches, control
Really?
structures, ditches,
Okay.
things like that. Like it just slows the water down, a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, I think you'll note, like, I think moist soil management at this latitude is relatively easy because the amount of invasives that will take over during the growing season is a lot less in general. The perennial, like, if you ignore stuff and you do the timing of the drawdown wrong or disking at the wrong time, you can promote perennials that are problematic. But as far as annuals, it seems pretty easy at this latitude. I mean, the south is just ate up with invasive species for the most part, mid latitudes and further south. So cool. All right, we're going to be back in a second after this message from Hancock Seed and their collaboration with Foul Weather. It is months until planting season, but your vision is already clear. The land is your passion, and Hancock Seed has your back. You plan food plots to feed and attract game in ways that matter for months. Live on your land with Hancock Seed. Today you plan, tomorrow you harvest. With Hancock Seed, you get family farm faith, nearly a century in the making. Hancock Seed has partnered with Foul Weather to produce 3 distinct seed blends. The Northern Deer Food Plot Mix, a proven combination that keeps deer coming all year round. The Southern Waterfowl Mix for carbohydrate-driven ducks. And the Northern Waterfowl Mix, built to succeed even in the toughest summers. Hancock Seed specializes from turf to plow and beyond. Find them today at hancockseed.com. That's hancockseed.com. All right, my friends across duck country, we are back, and we got Ed all shaking in his boots about the game he's got to play now. He's up against some big hitters out there over the last few weeks, and I'm keeping track of everybody's answers, and we'll see who wins at the end. This is Duck Duel. I say it's the official betting platform of the Foul Weather podcast, but that can't be true because I can't we legally can't do that. Nobody's really winning anything. I don't know. I might just send everybody Foul Weather swag at the end. Like everybody, right? It's Foul Weather swag at the end of this. But all we do is like the over under, if you're familiar with that for betting. And it might be like a harvest number. And you say whether you think the number is going to come in over or under that. It might be sex ratios, BPOP estimate, or something about May ponds or whatever, right? So that makes sense, Ed. You're familiar with the whole betting scheme.
Makes sense to me.
Cool. All right. So all you have to do after I ask the question is say over or under. So these are the same for everybody, for folks that have heard this before, but it's kind of fun because we get quite a different set of answers from everybody. But we're going to start with our good old boys in Arkansas. So Arkansas mallard harvest from last season, the 25-26 season. The over under is 500,000 for mallards.
Under.
Under. That's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I feel like there was a lot of discussion that they didn't have any ducks, but I think that's what people say when they have ducks too, sometimes. So, total number two, total duck population in the traditional survey area for this coming summer, 32 million. And so my
Over.
over-unders are about what they were last, like they're around what last year's number was. So,
I'm gonna say over.
yeah, good for you. Like slightly or how much do you want to give me a number?
I'm gonna say 34.7.
Point 0.7. Okay, I like it. I wrote it down. So I got a big spreadsheet going. It's gonna be fun at the end of the year. With all the cuts to the federal government, we'll see how quick they get the harvest survey stuff done, though. So, anyhow, mallard population in the eastern survey area. So these are your birds in the east if they ever show up for you. Estimated abundance 1 million.
Over.
I like it. I've been seeing, so this is crazy. Normally we only see like cottage ducks and then like ducks in town. And I said for years, like all this game farm mallard genetic stuff is screwing with them and they just don't leave people. They don't leave town. I have been seeing more mallards in traditional kind of beaver ponds, wetland complexes, wildlife management areas than I've seen in a very long time. So it gives me some faith that something's going on. Maybe they've hit critical mass in the cities and they're starting to overflow. Whether they're successful or not, I don't know. But I've definitely been seeing more birds. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Louisiana total duck harvest for last year, 1.3 million.
Under.
Hmm. Is that based on the migration, you think, or just the bee pop driving that? What's your thoughts?
That's just based on the noise I hear about everybody complaining.
Okay. Well, we'll see how. Well, we'll give you the mallard harvest then for Louisiana. Total mallard harvest for last season, 70,000.
You know I gotta hit the under there.
I think it was 50 the year before. So you might be right there. I think this is a fun one. We can talk about it a little bit. Immature versus adult mallard age ratios in last year's harvest for South Carolina, two immatures to adults.
I'm gonna go under again.
Okay. So the reason I put this one in here is it's fun. Like I gave a presentation in South Carolina. There were DNR folks there. It was at the Nemours plantation. And because we are collaborating with them a little bit. And if you look at the age ratios, like across all the other states, like northern states are at like 1.8, 1.9, somewhere near two immatures to adults. But by the time you get down south, all those immatures are dead, right? And so you're really left with a lot of adults in the population. Well, South Carolina one year, and this is from the wing bee stuff, was at five immatures per adult, which is unheard of even at northern states. So you know what that's from.
They're putting out a bunch of mallards.
They're dumping mallards out, yeah. And so it's all screwy. And the people in South Carolina were like, wow. I'm like, how do you not know that you're doing this? So yeah, every farm raised duck is a juvenile. They don't keep them for more than 1 year. So um all right, California mallard harvest for last year, 150,000.
Under.
I think you're right. It was the season started out really good where like Alaska was cold and up through, the northern portions of the parkland, the prairies, but then it just got really warm. And I don't think between that and California's local mallard population declining, I think they probably were hurting last year. So, all right, on to the important one. May ponds in prairie and parkland, Canada, and the north central US. This is the May ponds that you hear about, that number in the kind of traditional area you hear about. So, at 4 million for this year.
Over.
Yeah.
Gotta be
Have
optimistic.
you have you been hearing chatter about conditions on the prairies?
Not beyond looking at the habitat condition, map.
Like
Uh,
the DU mag stuff,
the
yeah,
yeah,
and those.
exactly.
Yeah, I've chatted with a few people, Heath Hagee, well, Jake over in
Hmm.
Minnesota, and he hunts over in South Dakota, and yeah, it looks better on the U.S. prairies. So hopefully we get some really good production. I think fall was just wet. We went into the fall, into winter with leftover water. So all right, Atlantic Flyway total duck harvest 300,000. Dismal.
Over
Over. Um, I don't. It's
300,000?
crazy. Yeah,
That seems very low.
is that my wrong number? Well, then you're gonna be right.
I think North Carolina kills about that.
No, it's only no, maybe. Let me go back and look at my numbers, but you'll probably easily get that one.
I think with
Mississippi
the
fly. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was
Go
just say,
ahead.
I think like the most recent estimate was like over 400,000 for North Carolina's harvest with the new methods.
Maybe that's supposed to be 3 million.
If it's 3 million, I'll say under, but if it's 300,000, I'm going to say over.
I'm sticking with a number that's there for you, Ed. So I'm gonna owe everybody a prize at the end of this because my questions were BS, probably. Mississippi Flyway total duck harvest 6.4 million. This is your number 10. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Under.
Under. Okay.
A lot of
Yeah.
people complaining last year.
It is so hard to read though. It's not. Sometimes I look at the social media chatter and I don't trust my weather severity index. And then I talk to people that are really in the know that are kind of experts out there and they're like, "No, your weather severity index nailed it all season for us." And so I think I got to try to tune some of that stuff out
Mhm.
sometimes, really, is what I need to do and just trust the damn thing for how well it's worked over the years. So, all right, Ed, your over-unders are in. We'll see how you stack up against all the rest of the experts kind of coming along throughout the summer season, and we'll give you we'll send everybody out the results in the end. So, uh, why don't you talk about some of the great conservation work that you're doing? I mean, we didn't do the DU thing yet, right? And you're kind of in a managing role now with folks working with you and helping out the
Mhm.
team. So, can you detail what your team's doing for the great people across duck country to kind of help keep these ducks with us in the southeast U.S.?
Yeah. I'm very proud of the work that Ducks Unlimited is doing across the continent, and especially right here in our area. I think that it's been a tremendous year for habitat delivery for us. This fiscal year, we're on track in uh, the southeast. That counts Florida as well, and for over 30,000 acres of impact. So that's pretty tremendous from my perspective. And in my
Mm-hmm.
program, we've got kind of two main arms of what we do. We do land protection and we do uh, restoration enhancement. So, and we do one of two things. That's either fee title acquisition or conservation easements. That's just making sure that that habitat that is there will be there. And then from the restoration and enhancement side, that's making sure that the habitat continues to grow and produce that is there.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, our team worked really hard, and we've done a lot of tremendous work. We've got some really cool projects up and down from Virginia. We're doing some shoreline protection work to really help curb erosion along shorelines, and we've got some impoundment enhancements in South Carolina that are really tremendous. And um, yeah, I'm very proud of the stuff that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And in North Carolina, we worked with partners and really helped to expand some game lands and help in one case actually create a new game land, which is
Nice.
open to the public for hunting. That's the
That's
kind of thing that I really love, is being a part of that kind of work.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to ask, like, in general, what, the split of public versus private, it's a nice mix, I'm guessing.
It's
What's
a very
your
good mix.
sense on that?
Now, the the Southeast, the majority of the land is private. And so if we want to provide habitat for waterfowl, we're going to need to work on private land to a certain extent. And so that's something
Hmm.
that I don't want to shortchange because, when we work on private property, whether that's through protecting it through a conservation easement or doing enhancement work on private property, I truly believe that we're providing a public good
Hmm.
working on private land, and but we also do a tremendous amount of work on public property as well. Like I
Yeah.
said, we partnered with the Open Space Institute and the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission to help. I think it was about 2,500 acres that we used North American Wetland Conservation Act money to protect and add on to a game land. And so that's
Wow.
2,500 acres. It's going to be open for people to enjoy, bird watchers, hunters, hikers.
So is that a straight purchase, or is it also a restoration kind of
That
activity
one
at
is
the
a
same
straight
time?
purchase. That one
Okay.
is a straight purchase. Now, we also, worked, so a good partner of ours, the Coastal Land Trust, the North Carolina Coastal Land Trust, worked with the Wildlife Resource Commission and they purchased a really cool property called the Willow Point Tract. Um, and that one has a large waterfowl impoundment on it. And the Coastal Land Trust, they did a great job closing on that and protecting it. And now we're partnering with the Wildlife Resource Commission to enhance that impoundment and make it a even better hunting opportunity for people. This was the
Hmm.
first year that it was open to public hunting, and I heard some really good things about it. But I think that the work that we're going to help do is going to make it even better. So I'm excited for that kind of work. And these are long processes, so we're in the early stages of that. Haven't even done the survey and design work for it, but you know, when that's done, I think it'll really, you know, provide a big benefit to people.
Yeah, good stuff. And I know it's multifaceted and each state functions a little bit differently. And then, North American Wetlands Conservation Act is the federal funding. Um, and those philanthropic dollars from DU really matter. How's that work? You guys have to bring, is it $3 for every one from NOC? I can't remember what's the numbers again, Ed? Do
So
you remember?
for the North American Wetland Conservation Act, those standard grant proposals, and I think the small NACA proposal is the same scoring for the match. 1 to 1 is required. So you have to have at least $1 of match, which is what we call it when you bring in non-federal money to
Mm-hmm.
match the federal NACA money. Um, and to get full points when you're scoring, and these are very competitive grants, so
Right.
we really try to target the full points because every point's really critical. You have to get 2 to 1 or over 2 to 1, that is.
Okay.
So for every federal dollar, you have to bring $2.1,
Yeah.
$2.10 to offset it. And we do a really good job, and our partners are incredible. The work we do wouldn't be possible without partners, and so um, it's, in my opinion, a really excellent example of bringing federal money, but also bringing private investment that
Yeah.
helps, make those
Yeah.
dollars go even further.
I think it's an amazing program in kind of twofold is that these wetlands are benefiting all kinds of migratory birds and they're benefiting water quality and recreational activities, fishing, hunting, and they're just these wetlands are an absolute asset to this country. But why I really like NACA is because I really don't like the man coming into my backyard and telling me what to do, and so you have to have local money that says, "Hey, we're going to do this," and then the federal government matches it. It's not
Hmm.
like federal cramming preservationist attitude in your
Yeah.
backyard. That attitude, that sentiment that we want these wetlands with us has to be coming from a grassroots,
Hmm.
non-federal money, to the table first. And to me, that makes it a great
Yeah.
program in
It's
general.
de it's definitely bottom up versus top down.
Hmm.
And the other thing I'd really emphasize is it's from a land protection standpoint, willing seller, willing buyer situation where, you know, every single tract is someone, very willingly coming to the table to protect their property in one way or the other. And
Hmm.
from an enhancement restoration side, obviously the landowner has to, be bringing this project to the table. So it's definitely a grassroots bottom up
Hmm.
type situation. And
And if it's a
the
purchase of property, they're getting fair market value as well through that.
they're
It's
either
not
getting
like
fair
you're
market. Yeah,
It's not
they're
like you're
either
coming in with and ripping them off or anything.
yeah,
Yeah,
no
it's
lowball offers, and
yeah.
you have to inform them of what that fair market value is if you're gonna, buy a piece of property. And in many cases, landowners are, doing the really good thing of offering up a bargain sale where they say, okay, I know this property is worth, um, just pulling a number out of the air. If the property is worth $1 million, I'll sell it to you for $500,000 and effectively donate $500,000 of value, and they get a tax break for that.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, yeah. I did
And
not
so
know
that's
that.
really tremendous way a lot of landowners, you know, partner on
Hmm.
these proposals, and it's showing that the conservation mindset is coming from these people themselves, and it goes a long way. It truly does.
Yeah, NACA is really the vehicle for the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, so we can help keep waterfowl with us. It's obviously expanded, I think, a little bit beyond that, but it's also part of, it came out of like the Bush George Bush Senior era of like no net loss of wetlands, and honestly, we're losing that battle now. The most recent wetland status and trends report of the conterminous United States, so like not Hawaii and Alaska, just the lower 48 is another way to say it, I think. We're losing that battle. We're starting to we got a lot of golf course ponds, but we don't have a lot of very good we're losing high quality vegetated ponds and stuff, and that's what DU's trying to do. So, yeah, keep up the good fight. We all know that feeling. Every waterfowl hunter knows the feeling. You're motionless in the marsh at first light, watching birds work the spread, hoping this season is as good as the last, hoping that the future has birds working the spread for generations to come. At the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, the mission is simple: to guarantee all Americans quality places to hunt and fish. For waterfowl hunters, that means safeguarding habitat and migration corridors and creating more places to hunt, so strong fall flights and good hunting opportunities aren't a thing of the past. As the nation's largest coalition of conservation groups, TRCP brings together hunters, anglers, and conservation partners to make sure the future of waterfowl hunting stays strong. Learn more today and join the TRCP by visiting trcp.org. And we are back with Ed Farley from Ducks Unlimited. So what's next? Where's life take you? You've accomplished a lot so far, and what else? Is there other stuff you want to see out in the duck world? I guess we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Is there thing? We didn't even talk about swans yet. Are you still? Let's just go with that one. Maybe. Are you still?
Yeah.
You still got the itch to shoot a swan, or do you just kind of take people out that haven't done it before?
I generally take people. They're incredible birds, and it's fun working them in. I like hunting them over water. I think that's,
Hmm.
really a fun way to do it. But yeah, I certainly apply for a swan tag every year. I think it's a neat thing, and they're incredible birds. And we're in a really cool area for them because of the high density of the
Hmm.
tundra swans. And it's really emblematic of one of the things I love about waterfowl is that connection with, you know, these pilgrims from the north. You're getting tundra swans that are breeding up in Alaska, and they're spending their winter down here with us. And so that's a really neat thing that captures my imagination.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I really love. And that's something that I love about waterfowl in general is that deep connection to the entire continent. It
Yeah. It's
shows the
wild.
interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah, they're migrating 75% of the year is about the time they're spending, and I've seen them in the prairies, Great Lakes, and then kind of the Montezuma area. But I've never been down to North Carolina to see them, but or Alaska and the North Slope
Yeah.
of Alaska for that matter. I haven't been on their breeding grounds. But what again, let's go back to the question then. Is there some trip you want to make, some adventure you want to do in the duck world, or are you like me where you're a homebody and you're pretty darn content with your backyard?
Yeah, I mean, from a trip perspective, I'd really love to see a lot of different places, some of the historic areas like flooded timber off the White River in Arkansas, or um, the Central Valley of California, the tidal
Mhm.
flats of the Pacific Northwest. Um, these are these historic areas are some of the places that I'd love to at least visit and see because I love the history of waterfowling, and I've you know, grown up reading stories from these areas and being able to see that connection and again look at that continent-wide view of it. And yeah, from a Ducks Unlimited standpoint, our vision statement is we want to see wetlands sufficient to fill the skies with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever. And these areas that have had waterfowl filling the skies in them, I want to see that that continues happening and experience that. And super important to me that I can experience that at home, but I definitely appreciate the continent-wide aspect of it too.
Yeah, you're a young lad. You'll have a chance to travel yet. I tell you through the podcast, I get a lot of invites and I just can't I don't have time for it, right? I got a fall semester, I got a spring semester, I got student research going on. I can fit one in per year. And it's in winter break, right? It's
Hmm.
really all I can do. I can't just take all I don't get days off. I really don't. Um, you don't call in sick and just, bang in and say, well, you kids, you're just not going to get taught anything this week. It's just not how it happens. So, but I've been trying to make one per year. Did a really good one with Chris Beckman there that advertises for us and last year and hunted with Forrest Carvajal as well down there. So that was just great people, great camaraderie. We shot some ducks. It was pretty slow, but it was all new territory, and that's what I like. That's kind of I really like to see the different landscapes out there. But let's do this one. What can we all do as duck hunters to make it all better for all the great people across duck country?
Buy an extra duck stamp. That's one thing I always tell people. If you get one, buy a second. That's one of the biggest conservation success stories in history. And I'm a huge fan of the duck stamp program. And
Mhm.
I'll make a shameless plug. Go to your local DU dinner too. Those are incredible opportunities to have some fun while also supporting the ducks. And I don't want to toot our own horn too much, but I think we do really, really good work. And I think I have seen the difference that it makes. And it's really refreshing to see how much people care because our
Mhm.
volunteers and members are the fuel that drives this ship. So definitely want to plug that.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you for that one. And the duck stamp one is easily. I think I bought five last year. I just give
Hmm.
one to my neighbor every year, and sometimes he hunts and sometimes he doesn't. But it sits on his refrigerator in the man cave, and it gets me a few extra free beers once in a while. So
Hmm.
you got your background blurred, but you got two dogs now. What are you working with back there, Ed?
We got a black and a yellow lab, and the yellow lab is a bit of a licking pot hound, but he gets out and hunts every once in a while. And the black lab, Olive,
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
more of the hunter, but um, I will admit that the limiting factor when it comes to my dogs is their training, which comes down to their trainer.
Yeah, yeah. We just got a new pup. I don't know if you've seen her on
Hmm.
on the Facebook and stuff and
Nimue.
Instagram. Nimue, yeah, and she's been fantastic. But I tell you, my wife is the trainer, and I'm like Fun Bobby from the if anybody knows this reference, it's kind of dating me, but it's from the show Friends. There's a character called Fun Bobby, and that's what I am. I'm just the one that's like constantly play and takes him hunting most of the time. Sarah works harder than I do at her job with DU as well, and but yeah, she's great with it. But we're signed up for like a puppy class with a retriever club, and then I think we're gonna do a formal training with her next year. We're gonna whip some money on it and actually get a dog that might be steady for once in our lives. So it would be nice. But so, Ed, love everything you're doing. Thanks for being you know, part of the duck world and I'd say a place that's deeply part of Duck Country USA where you're at and keeping it all together for all us sinners out there, right? That
Yeah.
don't quite get all the work done for the ducks that we should sometimes. And yeah, I mean, maybe spend a little more time with your dog, but not too much because y'all are doing excellent work, Ed. So thank you for being on the podcast, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon.
I wanted to let you know too that the harvest estimate last year for North Carolina was 480,000 ducks.
Yeah, you looked it up in the meantime.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm gonna fix that question again. So you're definitely right on number 9 for total duck harvest. All right,
Uh,
everybody. Thanks for listening, and as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.